Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into the really turbulent world of 19th century French art, and we're focusing on one man who basically threw a bomb into the middle of it all, Gustave Courbet.
Right. Jean-Désiré Gustave Courbet, the ultimate art rebel, you could say.
Absolutely. Not just content with painting things as they were, he seemed determined to, well, shock everyone and maybe even change the world while he was at it.
He really was. Born in 1819, died 1877. And he's not just a realist painter, he's pretty much the founder and leader of the realism movement.
And his whole approach was radical for the time, wasn't it? He just flat out rejected what came before.
Totally. He turned his back on the emotional drama of Romanticism, the classical myths of neoclassicism, and definitely the rigid rules of the French Academy.
So looking through the sources on him, it's clear this wasn't just about style. It felt political, almost like a social statement.
Oh, completely. His mantra was basically, paint only what you can see. No angels, no ancient gods, just the reality in front of him.
And through that reality, he made these incredibly bold statements about society, about politics. He was directly challenging the French Empire.
Exactly. So our mission today really is to unpack that. We'll look at his life story, how his background maybe fueled that defiance.
Then dive into those huge controversial paintings that really defined realism.
Right. And his political life, which got incredibly intense during the Paris Commune.
Leading to his exile, tragically.
Yeah, and then his legacy, which is fascinating. It connects in surprising ways to movements like Cubism even.
It's amazing how independent he was. That spirit really paved the way for later artists, didn't it? Like the Impressionists.
You could argue they wouldn't have had the freedom they did without Courbet breaking down those doors first. He forced the art world to look at, well, ordinary life, workers, peasants, the dirt under their feet.
Instead of just idealized history or myths.
Precisely. He brought art down to earth, quite literally. So let's start at the beginning. Where did this savage realist, as some called him, come from?
Okay, so he was born in Ornans, 1819. It's this rural town, eastern France. And right from the start, you see this kind of rebellious streak in his family background.
Yeah, the sources mention his family was anti-monarchical. His mother's father actually fought in the French Revolution.
So that spirit of independence, maybe even a bit anti-authoritarian, it was kind of baked in early on.
Seems like it. And when he heads off to Paris in 1839, ostensibly to study law, he pretty quickly pivots to art, but again, on his own terms.
Right. He spends a little time in a couple of studios, Dubin and Hesse's, but apparently he just couldn't stand the formal academic training.
No, his real education was self-directed. He basically skipped the official art school, the École des Beaux-Arts, and instead spent his time in the Louvre.
Copying the masters directly, that seems key.
It really is. He wasn't learning sterile techniques from plaster casts. He was looking hard at painters like the Spanish masters, Flemish painters, Rembrandt, Hals.
Artists known for depicting real life, real people, textures.
Exactly. Masters of observation. And studying them seems to have really cemented his idea that artists should paint the life around them, the world they could actually see and touch.
You can sort of see that transition happening in his early works, right? Some of those self-portraits are still quite romantic.
Oh yeah, like Self-Portrait with Black Dog, or The Desperate Man. Very theatrical, very emotionally charged. He's playing a role.
But then, after he travels, especially to the Netherlands and Belgium, in the mid-1840s.
Right, around 1846-47, that's when he seems to fully commit to shedding those literary imagined themes and focusing purely on observed reality. He saw how Rembrandt and Hals painted their world.
And then comes his first big break, right, 1849 at the Salon.
Yes, after dinner at Ornans. It's a picture of his friends just hanging out after a meal. Very undramatic, very real.
And he wins a gold medal. And the state actually buys it.
Which was huge. But the really crucial thing, the detail that unlocked so much for him, was what that gold medal meant procedurally.
Ah, this is that loophole, isn't it?
Exactly. If you won a gold medal back then, your future submissions to the Salon were exempt from the jury. You were automatically in.
Wow. So no more rejection slips from the official gatekeepers.
For a critical period, yes.
Yeah.
He had this artistic carte blanche until they changed the rules in 1857.
So for almost a decade.
He could basically exhibit whatever he wanted, no matter how shocking or unconventional. And believe me, he used that freedom. He unleashed realism onto an art world that was just not ready.
Okay, so let's pin down what his realism actually was. Because it wasn't just about accurate drawing, right?
Not at all. The sources are clear. It wasn't the smooth, idealized perfection of neoclassicism, nor was it the, heightened emotion and drama of romanticism.
It was grittier.
Definitely grittier, more physical. Technically, he often used paint really thickly, the impasto technique, sometimes applied with a palette knife, not just a brush.
Giving it that rough texture.
Yeah, a real sense of substance, of matter. It looked almost unfinished to eyes used to the polished surfaces of academic painting. He wanted to show the roughness of nature, the harshness of life, not smooth it over.
And then there's the subject matter. That was just as radical.
Absolutely. He completely ignored the official hierarchy of genres. History painting, big scenes from the Bible, mythology, ancient history that was considered the highest form of art.
Everything else was sort of second tier. Genre scenes, portraits, landscapes.
Right. Courbet basically said, forget ancient history. An artist can only truly paint their own time.
So he turns his attention
to the people and places around him in Ornans and Paris. Peasants, laborers, the local middle class, landscapes, subjects the Academy considered vulgar or trivial.
But by painting them, especially on a large scale, he was elevating them, wasn't he? Making a statement.
Precisely. He treated ordinary people and ordinary life with the seriousness and monumentality previously reserved for gods and kings. That act alone was inherently political.
Okay, so that brings us right to those monumental canvases that caused such an uproar, the ones that really announced his arrival. Let's start with the Stonebreakers from 1849.
Yeah, often called the first of his truly great defining works. And the story behind it is pure Courbet.
He just saw these guys on the road?
Pretty much. He saw two men, one old, one young, doing this absolutely brutal, back-breaking work, smashing rocks for road gravel near Ornans. He didn't idealize them at all.
He brought them into the studio, right? Painted them as they were.
Exactly. And he told his friends, Francis Way and Champfleury, something like, it's rare to find such a complete picture of poverty, so I got the idea for a painting right then and there.
The radical thing was, well, a couple of things, right?
Yeah. First, they're anonymous. Their faces are hidden or turned away. They aren't individuals so much as representatives of a class of exploited labor.
And second, the size.
The size. He painted these poor anonymous guys on a huge canvas, the kind of scale usually reserved for a major historical event or a religious scene.
So he's saying this grinding poverty, this labor, is as significant as a battle or a coronation.
That's the message. And people got it. Socialist thinkers like Proudhon saw it immediately as this powerful image of peasant life, almost an icon.
It's just devastating that the painting itself is gone.
It really is. Destroyed in 1945 during the bombing of Dresden while it being moved for safety, a huge loss for art history. Its destruction kind of underscores how potent and sometimes dangerous politically charged art can be.
If Stonebreakers was a shock, what about a burial at Ornans? That sounds like it landed like a bomb.
Oh, it was an earthquake, 1849 to 1850, and even bigger than Stonebreakers. We're talking 10 feet high by 22 feet wide. Massive.
And the subject? Just a funeral in his hometown.
Exactly, the funeral of his own granduncle. But instead of hiring models or stylizing the scene, he used the actual townspeople of Ornans, dozens of them.
Just lined up, looking like real people at a funeral, I guess.
Pretty much. Some look bored, some look serious, some maybe a bit tipsy. There's no central focus, no dramatic outpouring of grief. It's just this slice of provincial life, warts and all.
And the critics and the public?
They were absolutely outraged, appalled. They expected grand tragedy, noble suffering, the usual conventions of a historical painting, which is the scale he used.
And Courbet gave them Ornans?
He gave them Ornans, dark, somber landscape, no beautiful people, just ordinary folks. The composition itself is radical. There's a long horizontal line like a frieze. It refuses to create a hierarchy. Everyone's just sort of there.
Someone famously described it as being like an upstart in dirty boots crashing a genteel party.
That captures the reaction perfectly. They hated the subject matter, the ugliness, the dark palette, the sheer audacity of putting this mundane event on such a heroic scale.
But Courbet knew exactly what he was doing. He had that famous quote about it.
Yes. He declared point blank, burial at Ornans was in reality the burial of Romanticism.
Wow. Talk about throwing down the gauntlet.
Absolutely. And it worked. He became instantly famous. Or notorious, depending on who you asked.
People were calling him a genius, but also a terrible socialist, a savage.
Right. And he leaned into that persona, didn't he? He cultivated this image of being an unschooled peasant, a man of the people.
Even though he was clearly very intelligent, very ambitious, sources mention his reputation for unbridled vanity.
It's a fascinating mix, this huge ego combined with this genuine, radical sympathy for the common person. He explicitly linked his realism to anarchist politics.
There's that quote from 1850 to a friend.
Yeah, where he says something like, "In our so very civilized society, it is necessary for me to live the life of a savage. I must be free even of governments. I must address myself to the people directly."
He saw himself as needing to operate completely outside the system.
Which makes perfect sense of his next big move, arguably one of the most defiant acts in 19th century art history.
The 1855 Exhibition Rebellion.
Exactly. The setting is the huge Exposition Universelle in Paris, 1855, a massive state-sponsored World's Fair.
Courbet submits his work.
14 paintings. But despite his gold medal status, the jury rejects 3 of his most important pieces, including Burial at Ornans and his massive new allegorical painting, The Artist's Studio.
So the establishment, even with his previous success, still drew a line.
They did, and Courbet's response, basically, fine, I'll do it myself.
He sets up his own show.
Right next door to the official exposition. He builds his own temporary building, financed partly by himself, partly by his patron Alfred Bruyas, and calls it, bold as brass, the Pavilion of Realism.
Just thumbing his nose at the whole system.
Completely. Inside, he shows 40 of his paintings, including the rejected ones, and he even writes his own manifesto for the catalog.
That act alone is just huge. It's like the birth certificate of the independent art exhibition.
It really is. It showed other artists, like the later Impressionists, that you could bypass the official salon system. You could take control of how your art was seen.
And the centerpiece was that rejected painting, The Artist's Studio.
Which is, well, it's a lot to take in. It is. It's enormous, complex. He subtitled it, "A Real Allegory Summing Up 7 Years of My Artistic and Moral Life." So it's deeply personal, but also a statement about his world.
It's famously divided into 2 sides, right? With Courbet himself painting in the middle.
That's the structure. In the center, you have Courbet painting a landscape with a nude model representing truth or nature looking on, and a small boy admiring his work.
Okay, and the 2 sides.
On the right, he places his friends, his supporters, the people who get his art. Figures like the critic Champfleury, the poet Baudelaire, his patron Bruyas. They represent, the intellectual and artistic allies.
And on the left?
That's what he called the other world of trivial life. It's a real mix. A priest, a prostitute, a gravedigger, hunters, merchants. Figures representing, as he put it, the exploited and the exploiters, the people who live off death, poverty and wealth side by side.
And this is where that hidden political jab comes in. The one they found with X-rays.
Ah, yes. That figure on the far left, the man with the hunting dogs, he seems to have been added later.
And he's identified that?
By the dogs, and especially by that distinctive twirled mustache. It's widely believed to be an allegorical representation of Emperor Napoleon III.
Wow. So Courbet paints this grand allegory of his life, and he sticks the Emperor of France over on the side with the exploiters and the morally dubious characters.
It's an incredibly bold, if subtle, critique. Basically suggesting Napoleon III's rule, his ownership of France, was illegitimate. It shows just how deeply his art and his anti-authoritarian politics were linked.
And he doubled down with that manifesto he published for the pavilion.
He did. He laid out his aim to translate the customs, the ideas, the appearance of my epoch, according to my own estimation, to be his own judge.
He wanted to create living art,
Yeah.
right? Rejecting art for art's sake.
Exactly. For Courbet, art had to be engaged with its time, with social reality, with the individual's perception. It wasn't just about making pretty things. The pavilion itself wasn't a huge commercial success initially, but it absolutely cemented his status as a hero for the avant-garde. Manet, Whistler, they were paying attention.
His reputation for scandal didn't exactly fade after that, did it? Though maybe the focus shifted a bit in the 1860s.
Yeah, it seems like the main source of shock moved more towards representations of women and sexuality. He started painting nudes that really pushed boundaries.
Another way to attack those academic ideals of beauty.
Precisely. Take Young Ladies on the Banks of the Seine from 1857. The scandal wasn't just that they were lounging by the river, maybe partially undressed. It was that they were clearly modern women.
Possibly identifiable as prostitutes, right?
That was the interpretation. And they're casually showing their undergarments. Critics were used to idealize timeless nymphs in landscapes. Courbet gave them contemporary women looking frankly bored or drowsy in their underwear. It felt vulgar, too real.
And this leads to commissions for even more provocative work.
Yes, particularly from Khalil Bey, this Ottoman diplomat who was a well-known collector of erotic art. Courbet clearly understood the market for controversy, but it also aligned with his desire to break taboos.
Which resulted in some extremely famous and for a long time hidden paintings.
Absolutely. Le Sommeil or Sleep from 1866. Two women entwined intimately in bed. It was so explicit that when a dealer tried to show it just a few years later, in 1872, the police actually got involved.
And then there's the most infamous one of all, L'origine du monde, The Origin of the World, also 1866.
Yeah. A close-up, starkly realistic depiction of female genitalia, commissioned by Khalil Bey, kept hidden in private collections and not publicly exhibited until, believe it or not, 1988.
Almost 125 years later, it shows just how shocking its directness, its sheer materiality was.
And even here, you see the realist principle. It's not a stylized Venus, not an idealized form. It's painted with that same attention to physical presence, to the body as real matter. No romanticizing, even in the erotic.
He just never stopped poking the bear, did he? Right up to the end of the Second Empire.
Never. The perfect example is in 1870. Napoleon III's regime is weakening, trying to win over liberals. So they nominate Courbet for the Legion of Honor, France's highest decoration.
A huge official honor.
And Courbet, he publicly loudly refuses it.
Of course he does.
Writes this open letter saying the state has no business honoring artists, that honor lies only in an artist's own work and principles. It completely enraged the government, but made him a massive hero to the opposition.
Which perfectly sets the stage for his role in the upcoming political chaos.
Absolutely. That refusal is like the prelude to his involvement in the Paris Commune.
Okay, so Section 4. The Commune, Exile, and the Vendôme Column. This is where it gets really dramatic and ultimately tragic for Courbet.
It really does. The context is the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. France suffers a humiliating defeat. The emperor is captured, and a new provisional government, the Government of National Defense, takes over.
And Courbet, now this famous anti-establishment figure, weighs in.
He does. In September 1870, he writes to the new government with a pretty radical proposal regarding the Vendôme column.
That huge column in central Paris, covered in bronze reliefs, celebrating Napoleon I's victories.
The very one. Courbet argued it was a monument to war and conquest, symbols that a modern republic should reject. He said it perpetuated outdated imperial ideas.
What did he want to do with it?
His initial idea was actually quite moderate, in a way. He suggested dismantling it carefully and moving it somewhere less prominent, like the Hôtel des Invalides, the military museum and hospital, preserve it as history, but remove its symbolic power.
He also had a more utopian idea, didn't he?
Yeah, this grand vision of melting down the bronze from the column, along with captured German cannons, to create a new monument topped with a Phrygian cap, the symbol of liberty dedicated to peace and the federation of French and German peoples.
Very idealistic. But things didn't stay calm for long.
Not at all. The Siege of Paris, hardship, political tension. It all explodes in March 1871 when the national government tries to disarm the Paris National Guard. The government flees, and a revolutionary city council, the Paris Commune, takes control of the city.
And Courbet dives right in.
Head first. He becomes a really active figure in the Commune's administration. He helps organize something called the Federation of Artists.
Which includes some big names.
Yeah, people like Daumier, Corot were members. Interestingly, Manet wasn't in Paris at the time, and their agenda for the arts was incredibly radical.
What were they proposing?
Basically, dismantling the entire state-controlled art system he'd been fighting against his whole career. They wanted to abolish the École des Beaux-Arts, the French Academy in Rome, get rid of government interference in the salon, no more prizes, no more medals, a complete democratization of art institutions.
Wow, putting his money where his mouth was.
Absolutely. He gets elected as a delegate for his local district, the 6th arrondissement, and he's appointed delegate of fine arts for the Commune.
And the Vendôme column issue comes back up.
It does. The Commune government, much more radical than the one Courbet initially wrote to, passes a decree on April 12th ordering the column's demolition. Courbet, now in an official position, later follows up, requesting the demolition be carried out.
And on May 16th, 1871, down it comes.
Pulled down in this huge symbolic public event, a massive up yours to the legacy of Napoleon and the empire.
But Courbet, even within the Commune, wasn't just a follower, was he?
No, that's important. He remained his own man. The sources say he actually opposed some of the Commune's more radical or authoritarian measures, like setting up a powerful committee of public safety, which echoed the reign of terror from the First Revolution.
And he protested an execution.
Yes, the arrest and execution of his friend Gustave Courbet, a socialist journalist. Courbet reportedly resigned his posts in protest. So even in revolution, he stuck to his principles about individual liberty.
But that didn't matter when the Commune fell, did it?
Not to the victorious French army, no. The Commune was brutally crushed in late May 1871, bloody week. Thousands were killed or arrested. Courbet went into hiding.
But they found him.
Arrested him on June 7th. At his trial, he tried to downplay his role, arguing he'd only wanted the column moved, not destroyed, and that he joined the Commune to try and moderate it.
Did they buy it?
Not really. His signature was on documents related to the demolition. He was convicted, sentenced to 6 months in prison at Saint-Pélagie, and fined 500 francs.
And even in prison, he painted.
He did. They allowed him an easel and paints, but crucially, no models were allowed.
Which led to?
A really poignant series of still lifes, flowers, fruit, and most famously, paintings of trout.
Ah, the trout.
Yes, these images of fish hooked, struggling, bleeding from the gills. They're widely seen as allegorical self-portraits. The artist trapped, wounded by the state, powerful personal works born from confinement.
6 months in prison.
Yeah.
But the real punishment came after he got out.
Oh, yes. The financial blow was catastrophic. In 1873, the new conservative president, McMahon, decided the Vendôme column would be rebuilt.
And Courbet had to pay for it.
The entire cost, all of it. They slapped him with a bill for 323,000 francs, an absolutely astronomical, impossible sum.
Just pure political revenge.
Utterly vindictive. There was no way he could ever pay it. Facing financial ruin and likely more prison time if he defaulted, he did the only thing he could.
He fled.
Fled into self-imposed exile in Switzerland in 1873. He settled near Lake Geneva in La Tour de Pels.
Spending his last years painting landscapes.
Painting the Swiss landscapes, the Jura Mountains, sometimes looking back towards France. But he was a broken man, hounded by debt collectors, apparently watched by spies.
And then the final, almost unbelievable twist.
The French state finally worked out a repayment plan. He had to pay 10,000 francs a year for the next 33 years.
And the first payment was due.
January 1st, 1878. But Courbet died the day before, December 31st, 1877.
Wow.
From liver disease, made worse by heavy drinking. He literally escaped the first payment by hours. A life lived in defiance of institutions, ending by cheating the state one last time, albeit tragically.
What an end. Just incredible. But his death certainly wasn't the end of his story or his influence. Let's talk about that legacy. Section 5.
Absolutely. His impact was immediate and huge. Painters like Whistler, Cezanne admired him deeply. The Impressionists, especially Manet and Monet, owed him a massive debt. Monet even painted Courbet into his own version of Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe.
He kind of opened the door for painting modern life.
He kicked it open. But maybe the most fascinating and less obvious line of influence jumps forward a bit.
The connection to Cubism. That seems like a leap. From gritty realism to fractured perspective.
It does, but it's a really important insight. Key figures in the Cubist movement actually cited Courbet as foundational. Guillaume Apollinaire, the poet who is sort of the Cubists' spokesperson, flat out called Courbet the father of the new painters in 1913.
And painters like Metzinger and Glazes saw him that way too, alongside Cezanne.
Yes. So what's the connection? It wasn't about subject matter or visual style. It was about something more fundamental.
Materialism.
Materialism, how so?
Critics argue that Courbet, more than maybe any painter before him, relentlessly emphasized the sheer physical presence of the things he painted. Their density, their weight, their texture.
Ah, back to that thick paint, the palette knife. Making the paint itself feel like stuff, like matter. Exactly. When you look at the Stonebreakers, you feel the weight of those rocks. You feel the rough texture of the workers' clothes. When you look at Burial at Ornans, the ground feels solid, the bodies have mass. He refused to dematerialize the world through idealization.
He made things feel subject to gravity.
Beautifully put. He endowed ordinary, common subjects with this undeniable physical weight and dignity through his technique.
And how does that connect to the Cubists? They were breaking things apart, weren't they?
They were breaking down traditional perspective, yes, but they were also deeply concerned with conveying the solid three-dimensional reality of objects in space, reacting against the flatness or fleeting light of Impressionism. They wanted to show an object's volume, its structure, its physical presence from multiple viewpoints.
So while Cezanne gave them a visual language for structure,
Courbet gave them the philosophical or aesthetic imperative. The insistence that the artwork must convey the fundamental materiality, the weight of reality. That uncompromising focus on physical presence was the groundwork.
that's a really powerful connection. Before we wrap up, there's one more quite somber aspect of his legacy we need to touch on.
Yes, the tragic afterlife of some of his works during the Nazi era.
It's a grim irony, isn't it? The ultimate anti-authoritarian artist having his work looted by the Third Reich.
It is, and it happened primarily because many of his important paintings had ended up in the collections of prominent Jewish families, collectors who were targeted, persecuted, murdered, or forced to flee by the Nazis.
The sources mention specific examples. La Falaise de Trotta.
Owned by Mark Wolfson and his wife, who were tragically murdered at Auschwitz. The painting eventually surfaced at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, but its history highlights the complex, often painful path of restitution for looted art.
And the collection of Baron Mohr-Lipo Herzog in Hungary.
A massive, incredible collection, including several Courbets like Le Château de Blonay, and yes, even L'Origine du Monde was part of Herzog's looted collection at one point. The fight to recover the Herzog collection continues to this day, one of the biggest Nazi-looted art cases still unresolved.
So the political weight, the connection to justice or injustice, it just continues to cling to his work.
It really does. And restitution efforts are ongoing. Just last year, March 2023, Cambridge University returned a Courbet painting, La Ronde Enfantine, to the heirs of a Jewish resistance member it had belonged to before being stolen during the Nazi occupation.
It shows his art is still deeply entangled with social reality, with history, with justice.
His legacy isn't just in a museum, it's still being contested and reclaimed in the real world. He forced art to confront reality, and in a way, reality keeps confronting his art.
That really sums it up. What a life, what an impact. So Courbet, the innovator who basically invents realism, the political firebrand who takes on an emperor, the revolutionary artist who demanded that art look the world straight in the eye, flaws and all.
And his own words probably say it best. That personal declaration he wanted remembered. I have always lived in freedom. Let me end my life free. When I am dead, let this be said of me. He belonged to no school, to no church, to no institution, to no academy, least of all to any regime except the regime of liberty.
It's just amazing. A man who truly seemed to risk everything. His reputation, his money, his freedom, his life, for that idea of liberty, both artistic and political. Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. We've talked about how Courbet's great innovation was giving this incredible sense of weight, of gravity, to the ordinary world, the stones, the bodies, the landscapes, making them physically present, undeniably real. So here's the question. What fundamental physical or social force today, something perhaps ignored, glossed over, or deliberately avoided by mainstream culture, is waiting for a contemporary artist to give it that same kind of revolutionary weight and unavoidable presence?
What needs to be made inescapably real for us now, the way Courbet made poverty or a provincial funeral real for his time? Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.